What's up, everybody? It is Dankamyouknow, and I am back with another video. And hey, HP, me and you, we gotta have a real good talk. And yeah, I'm wearing a PlayStation sweatshirt. This is a PC channel. What of it? Let's get into it. So, as most of you might know, I've owned my HP Omen desktop for over 6 months now, and I did my initial YouTube review on June 7th of 2020, and since then I've gained 1,800 subs, and our Omen users Discord group is up to 650 members, and just about every day I come in and check all my socials. I get tons of questions and concerns over the HP Omen, so I wanted to dedicate a video to basically all the issues that I've seen with HP Omens and what I think HP should do to change some of these very common issues that a lot of folks are getting. So the first thing that's got to change has to be the stock CPU air cooler. And I know Cooler Master designed most of the parts on Omens, such as the power supply and the two fans, and they must have designed and produced the stock CPU cooler. But when I got my Omen in its stock form, I was seeing temperatures between 75 to 80 C while gaming, which technically is safe, but definitely is a bit warm. But when I rendered videos, I was seeing temperatures between 90 to 95 degrees Celsius, which is just absolutely unacceptable because rendering videos, depending on if it's a 4K video and the duration of the video could take anywhere from a couple minutes up to an hour to render a video, and pinning the processor at 90 to 95 C for that long, which is definitely going to cause it to throttle, is just unacceptable, especially for such a simple task. Well, maybe not simple, but a common task as rendering videos, because this is 2020, 2021. So rendering videos and editing videos nowadays when everybody's staying home is pretty common. And for a processor to run that hot while rendering a video, it's not acceptable. And for another $30 to $40 on the asking price for MSRP, they easily could have added a more efficient CPU cooler with maybe a push-pull setup to cool this thing down a little bit, because those temperatures with the stock CPU cooler it's unacceptable. And I'm gonna throw a picture up on the screen, but the amount of area that the CPU cooler does not cover, it's a lot. And if you look at a lot of aftermarket coolers, they cover almost the entirety of the processor, and this one's got a good 10 to 15 millimeter gap around all of the edges for where the CPU cooler hits. And I just really think this needs to be redesigned, and they need to do something else with the stock CPU cooler. And one thing that blows my mind is on a small amount of Omens, they do come with 120 millimeter AIOs, which bolt to the bracket at the top of the case. But if you have an air-cooled equipped Omen, that bracket is installed at the top of the case, but it's completely blocking any airflow from traveling upward and out of the PC, which it creates an oven in the case for these Omens. And the bracket itself isn't the problem. It's the four squares that are attached to this bracket that if you had a fan or a liquid cooler, you have to pop out these little squares. And I'll go ahead and throw a photo up here of what that looks like. But why couldn't they have just taken these squares out and mounted the bracket to the top, which would have allowed for a lot of airflow to come upward? And it may create, a little bit more dust in the PC, but I'd rather clean my PC a little bit more and have cooler temperatures than vice versa. So I just really don't understand why this bracket was installed at the top of the case, especially with the four squares in it attached. They easily could have just pressed those out, and everyone I've told to remove the bracket when they first get the PC, they notice a 1 Celsius up to a 5 Celsius degree temperature drop. So it just blows my mind that they left this bracket in. And speaking of 120 millimeter AIOs, You'll notice that a lot of Omens nowadays are coming with new graphics cards and new processors such as the 10850K. And I've had a lot of people report back to me that even while in game, they're seeing temperatures up to 90 degrees Celsius. And these have a 120 millimeter AIO, which usually aren't as efficient as most air coolers. It's when you jump into the 240 millimeter range, that's when they become very efficient and usually more efficient than the majority of air coolers. But 90C on a stock pre-build while in game it's not acceptable, because if you're going to get a PC with a 3080 and you have to turn down settings just so your processor won't overheat, that is a huge problem. And we even have a member in our Discord group who took out that 120 millimeter AIO and put in a Noctua CPU air cooler, and he's still seeing temperatures in the high 80s. So something has got to change, and that's going to segue me into my next thing that's maybe got to be revised or changed, or something needs to happen, but that's going to be the case. And as much as I love the Omen case, which is the main reason why I got this PC, I thought it was super sleek looking, and the small form factor was super cool, and the side panel was awesome. And especially with the way the side panel releases, it's probably one of the most ingenious designs for a case I've ever seen, because you just have to press the one button at the back of the case and it fully removes the side panel if you need to get in it to clean it or to, do any upgrades you might be planning. But other than that, this case is an absolute oven, and it traps all air inside it, and there's really nowhere for a majority of the hot air to go, especially if you have a full-size graphics card like my Omen does. The case lacks any airflow, and all the people that I've seen have transferred their components into another case, even of similar size, have seen a huge temperature drop. So as much as I hate for them to change the case, I do think it needs to be redesigned. Maybe leave enough room at the top of the case for people to put in a 240 millimeter radiator, and just create more airflow in the case, because in its stock form, all the air gets trapped inside, and it's just not good for temperatures. Another thing I don't understand with Omens is why HP won't allow us to enable XMP profiles for RAM. Because if you didn't know, the RAM is a JEDEC profile, and just say you've got 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is definitely not enough nowadays for most games, which push up to 15 gigabytes of RAM. But just say you wanted to add another stick to make it 16, or even push it up to 32 gigabytes. And the majority of these motherboards can support up to 3200 megahertz. Well, if you install different RAM, it's going to default to a speed that is much lower, and there's absolutely no way to adjust the speed up to what it's rated at. And I just don't understand why HP just won't allow us to enable XMP profiles. And I understand they probably don't want us to overclock the RAM, for warranty purposes, but please, HP, just allow us to enable XMP profiles so we can upgrade the RAM like we want to, because I would love to run 64 gigabytes, but I have to use a program that only works for AMD processors to raise the speed up to its appropriate speed. So please, HP, allow us to enable XMP profiles. And another thing that kind of goes hand in hand with enabling XMP profiles is opening up the BIOS, because as of right now, if you go to the BIOS, there's literally 0 adjustments you can make except for running some diagnostics on individual components in the computer. And I think HP should, especially with how big of a company they are, come up with some software that can detect if you've made changes to your BIOS, so it can be kind of a proceed at your own risk. If you make these adjustments, it will void your warranty, but at least give us the option to, because as of right now, my PC is definitely not warrantable, because I've changed not just about everything, but a whole lot of components in mine. And I know that my computer is not warrantable, but I still have 0 access to my BIOS to undervolt or overclock or do any of the normal adjustments you can do in a BIOS. So I really think they should look at this and just give us the option to change BIOS settings, but maybe include a warning and some software that can detect whether or not you've been tinkering with it. And the last thing I want to talk about is probably something that HP is looking at right now, because I get comments about this all the time and it's a little scary, because what's happening is a lot of people are getting an endless boot. So basically the computer just reboots over and over and over, and it seems like there's nothing you can do about it. And I know HP is getting calls out the wazoo about this, because I get hundreds of comments that are saying, oh, I'm stuck in an endless boot. And I'll ask them what the last thing they did was, and it's a Windows update. So now pretty much anybody with an HP Omen is scared to do a Windows update, because they're afraid their computer is going to go into this endless boot that I haven't even seen a confirmed fix for yet. We've recommended doing, certain processes that may help get it back to the desktop and get it out of this endless boot, but this definitely has to be looked into, because it's turning a whole lot of people away from HP Omens. Because if you get a $900 to $1,300 PC and you boot it up and the first thing that happens is it just continually boots, there's absolutely no way you're going to want to keep that computer, and its reliability is always going to be in the back of your head. And I've seen a lot of people turn away from Omens because of this. So it's probably being addressed right now by HP, but something needs to be done ASAP, because I'd like to update my Windows, but at the same time, I'm also scared to. So given all this criticism that I've been giving the HP Omen, do I think it's a bad computer? Absolutely not. I actually use mine almost every day. I stream from mine all the time. Every video on this channel is edited through here, but I had to fork over about $200 to $300 of my own money in a different CPU cooler and all the fans attached to it, because as of right now, my computer runs great. Like, even while in game, I see temperatures between 50 to 60 Celsius, and even while rendering, the max temperature I see is 70 degrees Celsius. So the computer is great, and in its stock form, it just needs a little bit of work, in my opinion, and just a few changes made. But as of right now, the way my computer sits, it runs fantastic. It can handle all games. It can handle any process with cooler temperatures than I see, majority of, custom builds. So I just think a few of these changes need to be made, and the HP Omen can really probably be the best pre-built on the market. Well, that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And like always, if you have any questions or concerns, to please comment down below. And please let me know what you think of the HP Omen, whether you own one or you're looking at one, and just what your overall opinion on this computer is, because I do love mine, but I do think some changes need to be made. And with those changes, this PC could be the best pre-built out there. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see y'all in the next video.